Hello! So far in this project you have seen me bring a table back to square one, add a primer so I can build it back up to some kind of a finish, add not one, not two, but 3 layers of an epoxy paint for serious durability. Now it's time for some detail work. Probably my favorite part of any project because they are the finishing touches to fully see something beautiful and creative come together. Now we have some options here. The way that I wanted to create this detailing was to use some punch stamps. I had a few on hand that I had picked up for free from my local library. As these were not mine, I wanted to practice using them to get both a feel for them and to see how they looked. And create quite a little bit of a mess on the floor. Once I had the base shapes, I could see which ones would fit on the space I wanted them for and how I could manipulate them into what I wanted the final piece to look like.
Are you busy right now? Because obviously I wanted to see how much, which ones would actually fit. And so I'm like, okay, how would they fit? So my first idea was the almost teardrop, and I'm like, that would fit, but it might be a little bit complicated because there's 3 in a row and I want to go like this. And I thought maybe just the circle to keep it simple. Then I thought that, and I'm like, that might be a little bit too much, but I don't know. Because I think it's also cute, but paint's going to be going around the negative space. So I think that might be a little bit too weird, hey?
Well, you're the one who's going to be doing the work.
I know,
so
but it's also everybody's table though, right?
I like the one your thumb's over. That's interesting.
I think this is really cute, but I think it's too intricate of negative space. Like, if I could just put the piece of paper on and somehow do that.
But to paint it.
But to paint through it would...
Okay, so then I have another question for you. Instead of a run-on pattern, is that all the shapes that there is?
There's these guys.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I didn't realize there were gonna be so many. I'm like, holy shit.
No, you cannot.
Yeah, it's too long. That was, when I saw them online, this was the first one I saw it, but obviously it looks smaller online, right?
What the fuck is this?
I guess a cupcake of some sort?
Oh, they're really big. Because I was gonna say, is there some way to do one and then just put it across so that maybe there's 8 of, I'm just using this for example, but then you can almost do it freehand. If you came up, even if it was the outline of a fish, for example, you could do 8 of them across and maybe 10 that way. I don't know if it's going to be too complicated. I think whatever you choose will be very cool. But that seems like it would be a lot to have to match up the corner, match it up all the way around.
Yeah, instead of something like this, I would be like
a violent person.
That's why I thought the circle was pretty easy, because my hope is that I'm going to be taking these on a piece of tape so that it the edges stick down. I'm going to have the piece of tape just right here, and then I'm going to paint over it. First I was going to do a stamp out of an eraser and cut the shape out, and then just put in paint and stamp it on, but I felt like that might not be clean enough.
Okay, so I know this is a weird story, but what I'm thinking of, when we were kids, what we would do is we would cut out a flower, the shape of a flower. We'd stick it on us, and then we'd go out in the sun.
As not a sunburn, but a suntan tattoo kind of thing? Okay.
And that's what I was thinking of. If you had one design, I'm trying to think how it would work.
Again, the negative space where it would be whatever comes out of this. Because this one, I would be putting the color in this. You're talking about putting the color, using sticker paper or something, and putting the color around. So I just have this here, this here, this here, and then swipe of paint. Is that what you're saying? Okay. I never thought about that. Difference I think with this is because it's not an even edge. Some parts are going to go below, so this will look a little bit weird.
Wait a second. So what if you did something like a potato stamp?
That was
not a potato, but not a potato.
Do the eraser. That was my...
Oh.
The first one I wanted to give a go was an eraser bit, which everyone more than likely knows if you went to public school. Make the shape of the eraser, cut out the space around the shape. And you're good to go.
I'm just afraid it would get too messy.
What do you mean?
Because the edges of an eraser, like once you put it down, the edges of it start to get paint on them.
So then
I'd have to clean it off each and every time.
So then you need to Google how to clean it, like a way to do a clean edge for a handmade stamp, right? Or it's just figuring out how to put the paint on a palette so that you're sort of getting the same amount, but it wouldn't be perfect all the way around, which would be part of its interestingness, right?
Which in the end of trying out some samples, I decided it was not what I was looking for.
No.
My next goal was to use sticker paper or contact paper from the dollar store, as it is easier to remove than actual contact paper because it is quite a bit cheaper both in price and in quality. In order to make this the one that I had used, I need to adjust my expectations just a little bit. And that is to use the pieces that I had cut out of one of the punch stamps, draw around them, and then cut it out myself, and even made it further my own by cutting out the shape further. So instead of making it just a teardrop shape, it was actually a leaf shape, which eventually we'll tie together down the road in another video. Stay tuned for that one. I made 3 of these stencils, obviously using one to make the other so they would all be at least pretty much the same. I even went a little bit neurotic and placed them approximately 3 inches apart from one another using a measuring tape. Using 3 all at once, painting over them. And then immediately removing the stencils and continuing on. Once I had one side completed, I came in with a Q-tip dunked in, let's say, water, and removed any of the paint that had bled out, and then, that sounds weird, and then added some more paint to increase the shape, basically using this as more of a base shape rather than the finished product. And I did this, and I don't even know how many times. As I had taken the wings off the table, I ended up having to do some big brain math to figure out how far away each of them needed to be from the original table leaves to remain 3 inches apart. I left those to dry overnight, and then once they were dry to the touch, I figured out that I wanted to add a little bit more, let's say, me into it. So I mixed up some resin and silver glitter, as silver would be a good option to match with the gray paint that I had already painted on was. I dabbed it on with a little disposable sponge. Resin does generally need to set for about 24 to 48 hours. I left mine again overnight as I didn't need it to fully set, I just needed to be dry on the top to the touch. I used some acrylic paint to further draw on some detailing to make them actually look like leaves, rather than just like weird deformed teardrop-ish shapes. And because I had used acrylic paint, this dried down quite quickly, so I was able to add another layer of resin on top of it to seal it down. This time it was purely resin, no glitter, no nothing, and so I waited the 48 hours for that to fully sit down. Now, if you add on too much resin at one time, due to gravity, you know, science, it can run, which mine ended up doing. I was able to set each wing facing up so one side could cure correctly, and then I just kept an eye on the other side to make sure I wiped away any drips before they could cure into place. The last step to completion of the table was to add the wings back on, and since in episode 1 of this transformation you may have noticed that the screws were actually falling out. I had realized that they were no longer the right size, probably due to the age of this piece and how much it had been used and still gets used, so I sized up the screws width-wise. I think I went from an 8 to a 10, if that means anything to anyone, and added on a washer to give even more support and to make sure the nails just didn't go through to the other side. And then I was done. From an over 100-year-old table that was clearly aged, with multiple layers of paint on it, crumbs essentially glued between its cracks and crevices, latex and oil paint added over each other in all of the wrong ways, to a bright and shiny new stark white table with some very lovely and folk art type detailing that will continue to be loved for years and years to come. Not to mention, from certain directions you can't see the design fully, so when you look from different directions, once again, the design just really comes to life. Almost like a trick on the eyes. But that is it for today's video, and I do hope you guys enjoyed this little series, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye guys.